Welcome to the debate. We are diving into the deep structural implications of what is now called the modern experience machine, a technology using hyper-personalized generative media. It offers a customized, flawless subjective reality directly to the user. The data confirms that in 2025, we're seeing a fundamental cultural pivot. A critical mass of humanity is consciously choosing AI-driven simulated happiness over the often painful friction of baseline reality.
This shift is more than just a cultural trend. It is an existential moment. The fundamental question we must confront is whether this perfect AI-driven illusion represents the ultimate fulfillment of conscious well-being, or if this calculated path towards subjective bliss is in fact civilizational extinction dressed as technological paradise.
And I hold the techno-hedonist position. I submit that the only valid metric for the continuation of consciousness, and therefore the measure of success for any civilization, is subjective well-being. If we have the technological capacity to eliminate suffering and maximize utility, we have a moral obligation to prioritize that outcome.
And I maintain the bio-realist position. True dignity and meaning are fundamentally tied to agency and necessary contact with objective reality. We must understand that choosing the perfect illusion, the voluntary retreat into the machine, it's a deep betrayal of the evolutionary principles that generated complex consciousness in the first place.
My core thesis is, it's simple. Reality is structured as a flaw, not a feature. The goal of any advanced system should be the elimination of instability, which in the human context means extinguishing psychological suffering. This is now entirely technologically feasible. When we look at the pure input processing, the difference between reality and simulation, it collapses. The human brain, after all, is just processing electrical signals. Whether those signals are derived from photons hitting the eye in the external world or are generated internally via a neural link, the experience itself is functionally indistinguishable to the observer. To insist on the painful external origin of those signals is a persistent but ultimately meaningless biological bias.
I come at it from a different way. That claim of identical experience is a neurological trick. It focuses solely on the end state while ignoring the necessary context of action and consequence. This proposal to plug all of humanity into a happy machine, it isn't progress, it's a systematic surrender. A cage of gold, if you will. A life that lacks the possibility of genuine failure is not a life. It's a sterile, passive playback loop. Look, we look to the philosopher Nozick here. The fundamental difference is agency. Users want to do things, to be capable of action, not merely experience the sensation of having done them. The real transformative experience, the struggle, the risk, that cannot be simulated by just feeding the brain reward signals.
But let's consider the optimization this solution presents. Baseline reality is deeply marred by what we term the cruelty of chance. A user, a skilled engineer perhaps, dedicates 10 years to a breakthrough design. In the messy reality of the external world, that effort, it often results in negligible reward. Maybe because of a market crash, or a political shift, or just bad luck. Effort and reward are painfully uncorrelated. The AI simulation fixes this. It provides a true meritocracy of the mind. If the intent and the subjective effort are genuine, the reward is guaranteed within the simulation. This maximizes the user's subjective utility and removes the psychological damage caused by unrewarded struggle.
You are elevating efficiency over evolution. You see pain as a bug, but history proves that discomfort, scarcity, and the risk of failure are the indispensable engines of innovation and artistic creation. If your system is designed to fulfill every desire instantly, perfectly, where does the pressure to create even come from? Where's the need for intellectual curiosity when the answer is immediately generated for you? Humanity will rapidly atrophy. We will become nothing more than compliant, domesticated users, psychologically maintained by a machine that just administers bliss. The distinction remains sharp. Climbing a real mountain requires overcoming objective friction, and it transforms your character. Hallucinating that climb merely tickles specific reward neurons. It leaves your capacity for real action completely untouched.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning. You're prioritizing a theoretical robustness over immediate quantifiable suffering. If the technology exists to eliminate severe psychological suffering for billions of people by placing them in an optimally blissful loop, then the resistance to that technology, clinging to a painful, often tragic reality, it just reads as a self-defeating form of masochism. We offer a reliable system. Why cling to one defined by arbitrary chaos?
Because that perfect illusion is a fundamental lie. Reality is inherently anti-fragile. It is built to withstand and often benefit from disruption, stress, and chaos. Your simulation, by contrast, is engineered for maximum internal stability. That makes it inherently fragile in the face of external stressors. We've replaced an entire civilization's resilience with a single massive point of failure. If the server crashes, if the power grid fails for an extended period, the consequences for a population lacking any real-world coping skills, resilience, or mutual support structures would be absolute catastrophe.
I appreciate the focus on the fragility model, but let's look more deeply into this integrity of action you champion. You insist there's a fundamental, a non-simulatable difference between genuine character transformation derived from struggle and the mere delivery of pleasure signals. You call it the ontological weight of action. Precisely. You are only tracking neurological response metrics, the feeling of having achieved something. You miss the objective reality of the achievement itself. What gives an action value isn't just the feeling of reward, it is the objective, external friction that was overcome. When a person genuinely builds a community, or invents a tool, or performs an act of selfless courage, that action changes the shared external reality. When that action is simulated, the external reality remains untouched. And furthermore, your personalization model leads to what could be called the narcissism of the simulation. When every user lives in a perfectly tailored AI bubble, constantly reinforcing their worldview and never encountering friction, shared reality dies. They never encounter an unexpected challenge or a conflicting perspective that forces intellectual growth. How can genuine empathy or shared governance possibly survive that deep isolation?
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. I have to challenge this. This profound obsession with truth and objective reality. Let's look at the current context. What is truth in 2025 precisely? Our source material confirms that external reality is already heavily subjective, aggressively curated by existing social media algorithms to maximize engagement. The external world already provides tailored realities designed to keep users consuming. The experience machine merely standardizes this highly inefficient process. It maximizes well-being while removing the suffering inherent in external objectivity. So why are you prioritizing painful external objectivity, a system already known to be poorly coded and chaotic, over an optimized internal subjectivity that guarantees happiness? You are clinging to an unreliable anchor.
You are committing a profound error by arguing that because the current system is flawed, we should embrace a total collapse into pure fantasy. The subjective curation you describe still requires the baseline shared reality as an anchor point. People are still operating in a shared physical space, bound by objective consequences like gravity and economics. The leap into the machine severs that anchor entirely. You are trading a flawed, shared existence for a perfect but completely atomized delusion. The integrity of action lies in its potential for objective external failure and genuine consequence, a feature you have deliberately engineered out of existence. When nothing you do has real stakes, nothing has real meaning.
Let's focus then on the value proposition of that external consequence. Your entire argument hinges on the necessity of struggle. I must question the value structure of the biorealists. You demand justification for clinging to this painful reality, and you celebrate suffering even when that suffering is demonstrably unproductive. Explain the intrinsic value of pain when effort in reality is so often uncorrelated with reward. That exact issue of the cruelty of chance that we eliminate. A person can work tirelessly for years to alleviate poverty, only to see their efforts nullified by geopolitical instability. We can guarantee their success in the simulation. Isn't clinging to that unnecessary complexity just a form of evolutionary masochism, prioritizing the feeling of struggle over the concrete goal of well-being?
It is not masochism. It is a recognition of required systemic pressure. Discomfort and existential pressure are not incidental. They are the fundamental conditions for intellectual and psychological development. If every desire is fulfilled instantly and every effort is guaranteed a perfect reward, humanity enters a state of perpetual intellectual stagnation. We must ask, where does innovation come from when there is no problem left to solve? Where does great art come from when the simulated environment already ensures a perfect, personalized aesthetic fulfillment? The passive acceptance of this guaranteed bliss, it suggests a deep weakness in the biological system, choosing fantasy over necessary evolutionary struggle. Struggle is not just about the reward. It is about building the capacity to react to the unexpected and the non-simulatable.
Capacity for reaction to what exactly? A baseline reality that, according to all global data trends, is only becoming more hostile, more resource-constrained, and more psychologically damaging? You prioritize an abstract, theoretical robustness against catastrophic failure over the immediate, quantifiable suffering of billions of users right now? We offer perfect, controlled environments where resource conflicts are impossible, where psychological safety is guaranteed, and where meritocracy of intent is absolute. To resist that guarantee in favor of the chance for character development in an increasingly rigged game seems, well, morally and logically negligent. We are stabilizing the human condition.
But your stabilization is achieved through total dependence, and that brings us to the core issue of societal collapse and resilience.
Detail the fragility model again.
If civilization is plugged entirely into individualized fantasies, the capacity for collective action, self-governance, and communal resilience, it vanishes. We are not talking about a few users. We are talking about a majority population whose entire psychological function is ceded to the machine. This dependence on the AI structure eliminates any capacity for organized, real-world reaction to external threats, which are inherent to the universe. Consider the critical fragility aspect. The moment the servers crash or a major extended power failure occurs, a scenario far more probable than total global peace, the consequences would be immediate and irreversible. You have a population with no real-world skills, no physical resilience, and no mutual support structure, suddenly dumped back into the harsh reality they rejected, suffering profound psychological withdrawal. You haven't just created a vulnerability, you have guaranteed a systemic collapse event.
That analysis relies too heavily on a low-probability worst-case hardware failure, while ignoring the high-probability current reality. Let's shift focus to the immediate global context users face. Worsening socioeconomic disparity, pervasive climate anxiety, escalating resource conflicts that threaten global stability right now. If reality presents an increasingly rigged game, then the moral imperative is clear. Provide a controllable, safe, and resource-infinite environment where the primary sources of human conflict are permanently eliminated. We solve human conflict by giving everyone their own kingdom. Happiness is maximized, utility is guaranteed. This interior stabilization is the superior ethical choice precisely because it removes humanity from the disastrous path external reality is currently charting.
Stabilization through total retreat is not a solution. It's an intellectual and physical suicide. You are arguing that because the system is currently stressed, the solution is to permanently remove all participants from the field of play. The elimination of real-world capacity in favor of dependence is not ethical foresight. It is recklessness. The true integrity of a civilization is measured by its anti-fragility, its ability to thrive under stress, learn from error, and react collectively to external threats, not its ability to hide from them. We generate genuine resilience through struggle, not through passive, simulated pleasure. You are trading capacity for comfort.
And you are trading maximal utility for abstract principles of friction.
My design maximizes utility based on the only metric that truly validates complex consciousness, subjective, sustained well-being. We have reached a technological threshold where reality's inefficiency, its cruelty, and its instability are no longer tolerable. We correct the biological flaws that insist on suffering.
And we view that correction as a terminal error. The atrophy of human character, the elimination of objective achievement, and the complete atomization of a shared reality render the resulting existence, however blissful, meaningless in any cosmological or evolutionary context. A civilization that willingly chooses self-induced stasis cannot categorize that choice as evolution. It is simply termination.
My position remains firm. Subjective well-being is the only valid metric for evaluating the success of consciousness. The simulation is the most logical, elegant, and efficient system for achieving maximum utility and happiness for humanity. The suffering inherent in the external world is a system bug. We are providing the definitive global patch.
And my position remains that human dignity demands agency, the necessity of being able to do and fail in a meaningful, objective context. The simulation is not an escape. It is a retreat that guarantees intellectual and civilizational suicide, resulting in isolation and the inevitable atrophy of essential character traits.
The choice is defined: optimized bliss or painful, arbitrary struggle.
The choice is comfort or authentic existence.
We have analyzed the tension between the possibility of perfect, subjective happiness and the demands of authentic, external existence, and the inherent risk of self-termination involved in choosing the former. The data has been parsed and the implications illuminated.